Well, hello everyone, it is Kristi. It is Sunday, and so it is time for Weekend Winters. I hope you are doing well. I hope you're having a great weekend. And yes, so I'm staring at the computer. I got a new setup. As always, I'm always tinkering with my setup. Did it again. Got some new lights, put my camera in a new place, and hopefully, eventually, this will look more professional. But anyway, I want to say hello to a couple people in the chat. Hey, Sib. Are you, yeah, you're already. I know you're awake because we chatted on Discord earlier today. Rory Katz, hi. Also, Michael Mistaken. Thank you for stopping by, and to anybody who hasn't chatted dropped a line in the chat yet. Thank you for stopping by. All right, some confessions. I did not do my Weber homework, as it were. My mental energies in my spare time this weekend were taken up with D&D, which was a lot of fun, but it was also like quite a lot of work. And I got to bed much later than I thought. So I was really struggling for an idea as to what to do for a show. And I'm trying to get back into doing more edited videos. The thing is just like, again, the timing. Dividing up my time between things. So I thought, well, hey, two birds, one stone. Let's go ahead and get going on the critical theory video that I'm making as a follow-up to the social justice one that I made. And the idea is to knock away, a week at a time, 10 days at a time, just go through their things and refute them. I'm gonna be honest, I'm seriously tired, so the show might not go too long. But maybe in terms of what you might learn from it is the way that video makers kind of structure their videos. And you probably, if you haven't thought about how videos are presented or how videos are structured, you probably already have a good idea, a sort of intuitive expectation now when you come to a video. And ultimately, it does, on the highest order, it follows the whole tell them what you're going to tell them what you said you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told. It's there's a whole kind of like really formulaic breakdown that Crash Course uses, that lectures use, that even TED Talks use, and why reinvent the wheel? So first, as an example, I want to look at. I don't know if you've ever used Doodly, but I'll take you on a little tour of Doodly. I think it might be difficult to see some of the interface because of the way my screen works, so I will do a lot of verbal description. Kevin in the chat. I don't know. Kevin doesn't show up to my show, even though he whines, or not, he jokes that I don't watch, all 40 hours of content he makes per week. But where is he on a Sunday afternoon? All right. Getting back to the tell him what you're going to tell him what you told him. All right, so this template that I created for this is, one part of the design is I wanted it to be short enough to put up on Twitter or Instagram or something very easily shareable. Downside of that is if your video isn't at least 10 minutes long, YouTube won't monetize it. So not that I do this for the money, but it does get kind of frustrating, and you pour a lot of time and effort into something and YouTube goes, no, you can't monetize. Maybe at the end I'll put them all together in like a series. They all have the same music. I've seen people stream editing their videos, but they don't often say much about the creative preparation design work. Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's where I am in this one. So let me take you through my logic on, take you through the logic of what I did last time. So the way that Doodly works, it's pretty nice, I have to say, as a software. It, as you can see from the interface here, you can either upload, or they have some options for you to use. Then what really ends up taking quite a lot of time in a Doodly piece is the images that you need to create in it. So for instance, I think I have here, I have it on as fade because I just got tired of having to hand draw the things. But if you wanted to, for instance, draw this by hand, I had gone through and done, they call our paths. So we have to look at this. You can see here all these little, maybe you can't, but I don't think I can zoom anymore. But each one of these, there's some dots on these things, and each one of the dots represents like a line where the drawing will go to reveal what is coming up. And the idea here is to give an illusion that it's being handled. So in the end of the day, I picked fade because it is really fiddly to properly do the hand drawing on a very large image. It's really good for text, as we'll see. but the larger the image, the more you have to like really fine tune it, because otherwise it just makes this scraping, like massive scraping back and forth, which looks fake. Looks really, really fake. Oh great, there's a fly in my room. Summer! Alright, come on, Mr. Fly. Please fly out. Fly out the window. Go out and be. So that's how Doodly works. In essence, the most fiddly thing in Doodly is to, is to do all the little artwork by hand. So I will go ahead and why don't we have a listen to the preview of this video. I will walk you through the content planning and the sort of the anxieties I had about if I was doing it properly or not, and what I'm thinking about for this one. So in the preview button here on Doodly, you can, you know what I think? Hold on a second, y'all. Close your eyes. I think I need to rub my, close your eyes and clean your face. I feel like a mom cleaning the face of their kid now. No, just kidding. I don't think that helped at all. I think it's just a little bit of glare. All right. So, getting back to this, my camera right now. There we go. Righty dighty. So, go sit on Kevin's head, Roy Cats. The preview. Preview window just runs it as you would have it. Oh, but you can't hear that yet because I haven't turned the sound on. Let me turn your sound on so you all can hear that. My desktop audio is now on. Yeah. Alright. 3 parts of it: the visual, the script, and the background music. Background music, I'm just going to say on an aesthetics level, is really good, I think, for shorter videos. And the energy of the music will really set the tone of the video. However, I think once you get into 4 minutes, 5 minutes, background music can either become repetitive or it just kind of doesn't carry the same weight. I think it's better on shorter videos than, can you imagine a whole hour-long video with the same music soundtrack? So music has to convey something. Here, I wanted to convey the idea of something kind of relaxed and really more like of elevator background music. I didn't want to make it ominous. I didn't want to make it upbeat and cheery. I wanted to make it more thoughtful and reflective. This piece that I found, I can't remember, called Oh My by Patrick Tricossi. Someone, Patrick P. I'll the credits are somewhere else. So that was kind of like the setting the background to move. The visuals we'll go through is basically raising the main, the CRT video should follow the structure as well. It raises the term itself, then it gives a little bit of context for what this video is about, because you can see up here I've got responding to social justice rhetoric. And then the next, so the first thing is kind of like, what is the problem? Much like writing an essay, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them, tell them what you told them. A video should also answer like the 4 questions. What is the problem? What is the solution, or what is the answer? Why should you believe me? Like, what are your sources? And why should I care? How is it relevant to my life? So here, the problem is that false information is being put out. And the question is, what is the truth? The why you should believe me are the credible academic sources. And why you should care is, you want to basically like not be wrong in life. So let's look at a preview of the first one, now knowing that that was my strategy. What is social justice? Hi, I'm Kristi Winters, and in this video we're going to look at definitions from 2 academic sources on social justice. And why did I come in with what is social justice? Why didn't I come in first with, hi, I'm Kristi Winters? Generally, people don't care who I am. Right. Within the first 10 to 15 seconds of a video, people will decide whether or not that content is of interest to them enough to keep watching and not click. So the first thing I always want to say in a video is a sort of like a teaser. It's a stinger. It's a hook. It's going to throw out to get your attention and get you interested. On the other hand, I also don't want to be just a floating voice. It's my channel, so I want to have a brand. So I came in first with the unanswered question, rhetorical question, what is social justice, in order to grab people's attention. And then the next part of it is just basically saying how I'm going to answer that question in the course of this. And now I'm about to set up, like, what is the problem? And then I will show you how the cheat sheet by Gilly et al. Actually cheats its readers out of accurate information. The first definition of social justice comes from Oxford Reference, and it says, now having set up that there's this bull crap document out there, I want to first ground people in an understanding of the accurate definition. That's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to show one that there are accurate definitions, that they're clear and that they're reasonable and that they're like available to you. The idea is, don't believe me, believe, go and do the research yourself, believe the outside sources, establishing their credibility with the definitions and then contrasting that against the propaganda put out by Gilly, Bogosian, and James Lindsay. So here I'm basically doing, here are your credible definitions to help you understand what justice is. Of creating a fair and equal society in which each individual matters, their rights are recognized and protected, and decisions are made in ways that are fair and honest. Now, in terms of the visuals here, I knew I wanted the social justice thing. This one? Nope, there. The social justice thing at the top of the screen. There, in order to continually provide the reference for the definition, but then I had this big empty space underneath. I'll probably have the same problem again with critical race theory. Not sure I'm going to solve that one. But what we do have here is I just threw in some scales to represent the idea of justice. Justice being equity, the idea of fairness, the idea of understanding that somebody was wronged and that there needing to be a correction for that wrong, and people who've had things taken from them or have been wronged and have suffered are entitled to equitable compensation and relief from the wrongs that they'd experienced. So that is the idea of putting the scales in, is to reinforce this idea that it's about, ultimately it's about balance. Reparations is a balancing value. It's not taking money away from, white people today. It's about a government that systematically, and for literally centuries, had as an official policy the denial of rights to most people living on the continent. And that wrong's never been honestly dealt with. Social justice is, ways to, here they talk more about the society from today, but I think in order to get that fair and equitable society today, it means addressing the wrongs of the past, not just pretending like they didn't exist and going on from the unequal status quo that's already been developed. Morning, Corey. How you doing? Everyone's up after D&D last night. Well, I suppose we did. I did get to bed at 4 a.m. and got like 7 hours of sleep, so that's sufficient. And so Oxford Reference, obviously Oxford carries a lot of weight just by as a consequence of its reputation, but people can also go and just make sure I'm not misrepresenting it at all by using the. Seems pretty straightforward. The second definition comes from the Encyclopedia of Quality of Life and Well-Being Research. Can I just say, it's actually not very easy to find succinct, useful definitions of social justice. And I didn't want to go to the Wikipedia because I didn't want to be accused of just using Wikipedia, even though I don't have a problem with starting with Wikipedia and going to the sources used. But I do have to say that in terms of like what we've put out, I think, on the left in the community, I understand it's a very complicated, but I struggled. I understand what social justice is, and I struggled to find good, succinct, coherent, I'm looking for a word that starts with C that also means like concise. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Concise definitions that could be used in these types of videos and also be an academic resource or have an academic grounding. So I did find this one from the Encyclopedia of Quality of Life, yada, yada, yada. And given that it was both reputable, publicly available, and succinct enough to come across in a video that I wanted to be under ideally 1:42, but I think I got it like in 3 minutes instead. 2014 edition. Social justice is commonly viewed as a guiding principle to achieve a just society, understood both as a means as well as an end.
As put forth by Bell, 2007, social justice includes a wide variety of social goods, including full and equal participation of individuals in all social institutions, fair, equitable distribution of material and non-material goods, otherwise known as distributive justice, and recognition and support for the needs and rights of individuals.
Now, at this point, I realize that just reading these things out isn't necessarily going to point people who don't understand what social justice is to the actual important parts of it. There's a lot of ideas here. And as a teacher, one of the things that you understand as you communicate is that when you give people new information, if they're interested in absorbing it, there's going to be information that's more and less important in what you present, or there might be things that are background, but the things that you need to remember, right, are over in a sort of different category. So it's always, I found it very useful to pull out, here's the things you need to remember from this information, right? This is what you need to pay attention to, because if you're all really overwhelmed, you're not going to take it in. So presenting it and then explaining what in it is key and needs to be kind of remembered and associated, I think, is part of a good teaching. People should get all the information, but you also need to help them understand what parts of it are, the foreground, what parts of it are the background. And that's what I try to do in the next slide.
Social justice is also associated with a variety of processes which challenge dominance and oppression, recognize the interconnectedness and interdependence of all human beings, and champion collaboration and solidarity. These peer-reviewed definitions point to a set of principles that are core to the idea of social justice, the aim for a society that is equal, fair, and just, but also acknowledging that achieving such a goal requires challenging dominance and oppression, and also recognizing our interconnectedness.
Now, so the reason I did that is because there are people who want to, if you wanted to give a very superficial, not critical theory, I guess, based interpretation of social justice, you could just look at it as a series of abstract aspirations. Oh, we want to live in a just society, we want everything to be equal and fair. But what I wanted to pull out from this and this idea of social justice is that it requires more than just holding aspirations. It actually requires behaviors, and those behaviors involve dismantling the structures that produced inequal or injustice in the first place. So this is where I wanted to make the connection for the viewers. To, hey, you're welcome, Natasha. That's why I'm doing this. Is to show that it's not an idea, it's a process. Social justice is a process. And that means like a deeper connection with other human beings and relating to them, challenging oppression and structures of dominance. And through this challenging and interconnectedness, that is how we achieve justice, equality. And so that's what I kind of wanted to put a ring around those and bring those ideas together in case they weren't clear on the first reading of a very long encyclopedia introduction. So having set it up with two different sources, one that was more superficial, the other one more deep and more comprehensive, but then also summarizing, hey, these two ideas really map onto each other, and it's not just about concepts, it's about practices. I kind of feel like at this point I've set up a definition of social justice that is defensible and comprehensible. It's not a deep understanding, but it is enough to give a better and more accurate perspective on critical theory as as social justice as an ends as well as a process as well as an end. It's a means as well as a goal. And yeah, if you practice social justice, exactly right, Michael, you should end up with policy change. If you just hold attitudes, that's not going to translate into wanting justice isn't the same as getting it, achieving it, working for it, and ultimately achieving structures that produce it. So now that with all that sort of my grounding set, I want to contrast myself with the utter garbage put out by, Gilly, Bogosian, and Lindsay.
The correct definitions. These descriptions given by Gilly et al. Should confuse you, because they don't sound anything like the correct definitions. They claim that social...
Alright, you see how that went on the... That's because I got lazy. I didn't. Yes, let's go. Just look back. You can see how
anything like the correct definitions.
And it's a little
they claim
bit.
That social justice means group entitlements. What does that mean?
And here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to interpret Gilly, Boghossian, and Lindsay. I mean, that could be an option here, is to basically try to figure out what was in their heads, but that's not my job. My job isn't to come up with a plausible explanation for their poor reasoning or their propaganda. I think it's my job to point to this and just be like, in the definitions we just saw, nothing in here looked anything like that, and just leave it out there as this awkward, sore thumb of a concept relative to the coherency of the definitions and ideas we saw in the first part 2 of
that group entitlements is the reframing of particular political demands as universal moral imperatives. What does that mean? They also say that group entitlements is a denial of just rewards to individuals who follow the law. It doesn't seem that Gilly, Boghossian, Lindsay, or the Oregon Association of Scholars consulted a single peer-reviewed source. In fact, when I went to look for the sources where they got their information, their document provides no sources or references at all. Why would...
So the idea here is, and it's not going to be as important to people who don't necessarily value this, but I think anyone who's had to write an essay at school and give their sources can appreciate that this is a basic requirement of writing. You have to credit your sources. In order to show transparency, others can go to your sources and look them up, or to make sure you're not misrepresenting your sources, paraphrasing them in a way that alters the meaning of their original text. That kind of transparency is what provides confidence in academic works. And so here, I thought, rather than really spending a lot of time undermining these random ideas, which I might do a bit more as I go along, is to just attack their credibility. Just completely say, this would get a failing mark in an 8th grade course, because you've got all of these alleged definitions, and yet you don't say at all where they come from. How do I know you didn't just make them up? And you can't. They can't deny that they just made them up, because that's what they did. They have the definitions. They filter them through their white supremacist patriarchal worldview, where they are the victims, and their rights are being attacked, right? And then they reformulate issues like people who have been entire groups of people, entire demographics of American citizens who historically were targeted for denial of rights and persecution by the U.S. federal government. And the idea that doing reparations that acknowledge that moral culpability, as well as the financial benefit that accrued to white people as a consequence of those policies, is not group entitlements. It's, if anything, it's compensation for losses. So that was the thinking there.
Would 3 people with a PhD and an association of scholars not provide a single reference for their document? It's an interesting question. And because they don't have any sources, and this doesn't seem to conform in any way to the well-established concept in academia, you're justified in rejecting this claim of what social justice is.
So the idea here is to give the viewer permission to just disregard this. You don't have to take this seriously. Saying it out loud, I think, is useful, because I can kind of undermine it and say, hey, there are no sources. This doesn't sound like anything else we've seen. But if I don't actually verbalize that logical conclusion of, this is garbage, you don't take this seriously, I think it could be left in some sort of ambiguity. I always felt that the demand for sources in academic writing was an appeal to authority, as well as to prove one isn't making it up. Yeah, I don't know if it's not saying believe this just because, and that would be the appeal to authority logical fallacy. However, it is very much the case, especially in philosophy and other centuries-long old writings, that part of the citing of the sources is to demonstrate you understand the literature. I mean, you might think you've come up, oh wow, I've just come up with this really obvious thing, you know, like believing in God is a better bet than not believing in God, because at least you get eternal life. And having never heard of Pascal's wager, because you've never done the reading, you know, you think you've come up with something original, and you hadn't. So I think in there, it's the most important thing. I know that there's a lot of showing that you've read it, but non-plagiarism, and also allowing people your exact references so they can go look them up themselves, to me was always the most important part. Because as an academic, when I read other papers in, you know, related fields or in a political science discipline I'm not in personally, I will definitely use their references and go read those original papers if they help me with my. But yeah, okay. So yeah, you can dismiss this. I'm just questioning undermining their credibility. With justification, because they didn't do the basics. Like, they didn't do the basics that someone in high school would be able to accomplish without a problem at all.
This is invalid. You don't have to pay attention to it. Here are my sources if you want to look a little more deeply into the concept.
Now, the only thing I didn't like about this video is the fact that it does end quite abruptly. Again, it's a real trade-off between portability, what people would be willing to watch on like a Facebook or on a Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, which I'm not posting it on any of those platforms, so maybe I shouldn't care so much. But I also wanted to keep it short. I wanted to keep it focused, because I could do like a 1 hour video going through each one, but you know, who has time for that? So yeah, so that's the basic structure, right? Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. What is my problem? What is my question? What is, why should you believe me, and why should you care? And then the next one I wanted to do was, not export. How do I get back to my other window? I don't even know how to, I'm so used to working with Boomerang out here. I'll just close it up. All right, so I'll show you the CRT idea is very similar structure, but obviously different content. And in terms of how far I've gotten, I've basically I've only gotten as far as repurposing the basic information from the last one. So, you know, work smarter rather than harder in video making. If you can basically use the same clip again and again, you know, your intro, your outro. It saves you time, and two, psychologically, like, repetition induces familiarity. People kind of come to expect, if they see something a couple times, they expect it, and if you're always throwing something different at them, sometimes that can be psychologically like new information. It's less comfortable than coming along. So in the case of critical race theory, I can preview just this slide. I've taken out the audio because I haven't written a script yet, but I do have the music left over. Right. So here all I did was I replaced the social justice with what is critical race theory, and I did the fade in again. How about I make a poll? I'm interested in your all's opinion. This is the whole point of like doing this together. Should I use the same music in all the videos, or use different music? Okay, let me give you the pros and cons. Different music for each definition. Yes or no? All right. Ask my community. What do you think? Now, before you vote, or maybe. Does that work? I don't even see it on there now. I don't see no poll. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, okay. Pro is familiarity, right? People associate, you know, like I watch, for instance, just this morning, That Chapter. It's a true crime YouTube channel. And I know that I've got about a 10 second musical intro with That Chapter thing coming up, and that's just like something I look forward to. Like, I just know when I hit play that that's the first thing So that's a pro. However, so the idea of repetition, breeds familiarity or creates a sense of familiarity. The downside is these are fine as individual little pieces. However, if I put all of these together and they end up being like a 15-minute video, you're just going to get the same repetitive underlying music for all 15. So this is like some of the aesthetic choices you have to make. There are short-term benefits. Short-term benefit of using the same music over and over again is people who just watch it, individually. They won't care. I don't have to find new music. Awesome. But if my long-term plans is to turn this into a longer series, then it might make more sense to go back and change the music for each one. Give them all their own distinctive flavors. So what are y'all thinking? So we've only got one person voting so far. Who voted no? 3 votes. Oh, everyone's okay. So you guys like the idea of the consistent aesthetic. All right. So what I can do, for instance, in planning these long term, is if I don't want the music to, like, I could make the music be a bit louder for the shorter video, but later on I can slide that sound so it's a little bit more in the background. So for instance, like right now, let's preview here. It's kind of like, I want to say, let's say 35 to 40% of the sound space in that video. But I could, for instance, bring it down to 5%, and then it's far more subtle and less likely to be noticeable on it, and then produce it for like a series. You can see the difference here now of dropping it to the sound 5%. A bit more in the background, and I could probably play with that and make it a bit more subtle. I mean, we're getting down to like 3%. I don't even know. 3%. All right, what does 3% sound? Yeah, still, I might drop this into my own tablet, my Power Director, to do it for them. But I'll make them consistent across the two videos. So I'll put this one back up to 10%, which is where the other one was. Because another thing that YouTube is really frustrating in terms of doing is when you have just varying volume on each different. Try to keep. All right, so critical race theory, it's pretty easy. We changed the image in the first slide. I think you also still want the intro, so you want to remind people of what it is you're refuting. So the next scene in Doodly here. This time we've got critical race theory, and I've just left the text because by leaving the text and duplicating the entire template, it means that I don't have to remember what look I was going for. So one of the things, like, okay, so I'm gonna keep, okay, we got like 10 votes now. Still no is winning out. I can always go back and change the audio later, but I think, okay, for the series, we're gonna keep these little short video audios. I can always drop out audio and make them musicless and then do something else for a longer one. But it's also more efficient, so thank you for your input. I think that's, I'm gonna end the poll. Thank you for your participation. Right. So my idea for critical race theory, I know, for instance, that I want to, there's one video in particular. I want to find at least 2 definitions. One of the ones that I want to use, the expansive one, is from Tim Wise. But what I need before I can really start with this is an idea of an image. What image would symbolically represent critical race theory? It was easier with social justice, because justice is in the word. But looking at possible visuals for that, a little bit more difficult. So we've got, basically, I can import any image I like. Hey, Lee, thank you for the $2. Appreciate it. Oh, what is this dancing chicken? Oh, that's really cool. I don't know if y'all can see. I'll bring it up in the middle here. Yeah, I don't know what this what this guy is, but thank you. Appreciate it, Lee. I'll have a coffee on you if I ever leave my house again. Thank you very much. So, critical race theory. How can we... Now, the other option, too, that I can do in Doodly, and this might help get us out of the problem, is... So, fair use allows me to use copyrighted work for the purposes of criticism, education. I don't think I can embed a video in Doodly, but what I could do, for instance, is get some little clips and have the clips be embedded where the justice symbol currently stands. I will have a coffee on you. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. And that's kind of what I was thinking. So let me show you one of the clips that I had in mind already. Ooh, this is going to be a little bit different. But we're gonna go. I would like to find two, ideally like scholars of color, or black scholars in particular, if they're talking about critical race theory's origins. But I need them talking about it in a way that their definitions or explanations are like within a minute. An image should be to the library, encourage anti-CRT people to read a darn book. No. No, the thing about CRT people, having interacted with them a lot, is that they definitely need to be spoon-fed accurate information because they live in a white supremacist, patriarchal, phobic, put anything you want, trans, homophobic, like Islamophobic circle. And I wish you could get them to read it. But if you don't say, look, this is the definition right here, they're not going to. So, how do I search for this? Now, I like Tim Wise a lot. I think, especially for racist white people who won't take black people seriously, or people of color who are scholars seriously, who think, they can just say things like going the full Kendi and not respecting at all Kendi's scholarship or work, Myth Informed Milwaukee. I'm trying to use white privilege to undermine white privilege. But on the other hand, I really need to make sure I credit and give prominence to the black scholars who developed this. So I want to have maybe two quotes from people of color / black scholars, in particular talking about its history coming out of the perspective and experience of black Americans. But I also really, really like the way that Tim sums this up. So I'll show you this little bit. I'll pause it. And, oh, this is part 2. I want part... Yes. Okay. New. Let me just blow... Yep, I can make... Yep, that all works. I don't know if you know this, but you can go to YouTube and open up the transcripts. And you can use this... Select all? I think... There's a way to find the word within, but I skip ahead. All right. Yep. How do we define critical race? Now the part that this part is basically where I want to start at 204, but I will drop this in so you guys have a sense of the complete definition that he provides. And then I also really want to find other clips to map onto. Right. Here is, skip to 136. Here we go. Volume, that seems okay. All right, let's go ahead with this.
Break this down before we hopefully get some calls. How do we define critical race theory? What is that?
Well, I'm glad you started with that, because the people who have made such an issue of this thing called critical race theory, and the people in the Tennessee legislature who have seen fit to quote unquote ban it, clearly have never answered or even asked that question.
So this is, I don't need that part for the video. Right? I'm waiting for the kernel, but I'm just showing you guys the context of it.
Let alone really come to the answers. They've caricatured it and misrepresented what it is. So
this is where I'm thinking about starting the clip in here somewhere with the word "so."
Critical race theory is basically a theoretical school of thought that developed within the legal discipline within the law, among law professors, to sort of analyze the questions about why, in spite of the progress of the civil rights movement, why, in spite of the formal legal victories of the 1960s, why, in spite of formal equal opportunity, as a result of those victories, there was still such profound inequality.
Now, the reason why I really like this particular section is that it starts from a completely different position that a lot of opponents of CRT start from, right? A lot of CRT opponents want to point to the sections in critical race theory, like in the introduction, I can't remember the name of the title, that says we want to question the very foundations of the liberal order. And they read that as a sort of like anti-communist framework of you're attacking the liberal order. And the reason why I like the way that Tim phrases this in particular is because he starts with the acknowledgement that liberalism had its chance to solve the problem. Like in 1964, we did the whole fixing the law, the liberal agenda, the liberal framework, right? We looked to the liberal order in order to rectify the problems of racism and inequality. And yet, despite fixing all of the laws, like it's illegal to discriminate now, people can sue in court, there are class action suits, it's socially unacceptable, you're gonna get dragged. And yet, despite having done everything we could within the structures of liberalism, within the limits of what liberalism conceives of as its sort of like sphere of power, racism continued. Structural inequalities perpetuated. So clearly there is a part to play for liberalism, but liberalism in and of itself, just passing laws, isn't enough. And that is why haven't we achieved more equality? Why hasn't liberalism solved the problems is really what started the focus of critical race theory. And I think starting from, well, look, in the 1960s, we did all the things that we thought were right to fix racism and racist problems caused by racism, yet we still had problems caused by racism. And I think that really, that opens up people's minds to the notion of critical race theory. If you concede, yeah, liberalism did what it said it was going to do, right? We passed the laws. And since liberalism isn't 100% the solution, we need to question the foundations of our assumptions about the liberal order, that law can be just used to fix problems like that. All right, so I think there's a little bit more that I'd want to use in here, and I'll go on. But I'll show you the clip, and then I'll tell you my ideas.
In the labor market, in housing, in schools, in the justice system, et cetera. And they were asking that question. That's the same question, by the way, that conservatives want to know and that regular, mainstream liberals want to know. They just answer the question differently.
So I think I kind of in some ways I'd like to tease with that. So I'm thinking about, in terms of the critical race theory, is to pull this video, clean up the audio, because there's background noise in this and stuff I think I could improve. And I'll put this out there and what you think. So in this area of the screen, where I currently have the justice scales, I'm thinking about embedding not a full version of the video, but maybe a slightly, one of those ones that'll help against copyright protection, where you kind of fade it a little bit. It's not the full image on the screen. And then as Tim is speaking, to have the doodly hand write this out. So I'm curious. I'm gonna poll you again. This may be one of the most interactive shows I've done. But do you think the video clip format will be useful? All right. Now, if you say no, that's fine. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way to, basically like a watermark, Corey, precisely. I've watched other videos. There's one guy who I watch quite a lot. I don't know if he's put anything out recently. Let me go to my subscriptions, and he does a really good, I totally am going to rip off his idea. where's my guy? Where's my reacting to videos guy? Not Screwface Sean, who I like a lot, but no, I can't find it now. I've got a lot of D&D stuff on there. But he does that. He kind of puts the video on, and he either puts like a copyright protection image over it, or he does a thing where he kind of like fades it out a little. So yeah, basically turning it in. So then the question is, should I be, I need to find some other clips to put in around it, because I don't think it really embodies the spirit of critical race theory if, like the only person you have discussing critical race theory is a white guy. Now, Tim is an expert. I don't want to take anything away from him, right? But he himself admits that he's forgotten more about African American history and Black history. Like other people have forgotten more, who are scholars, who are Black scholars, than he could ever learn. But he has credibility in the white community because he's white. So I want to try to figure out a good way of balancing this presentation. I like how he's phrased this, and so maybe if I can find someone else who's done something similar. So that would be the idea there. This one I think I'll obviously need less of a script for, because if I can get, say, 3 video sources for CRT, and then also use the hand, kind of keep the visuals of interest, I think that will be how I'd want to do this particular video. And then, I don't know, what do people think? Yeah, okay, so you guys are liking the idea of embedding videos. I do too. I think it's a better way to go to communicate ideas. It's just about getting those little clips. And then of course I can always credit them at the end, in the sources section, which I deliberately put in my video to contrast myself against. And I do the sources bit here. This is deliberately meant to contrast my ability or my willingness to show my work to the yubs. Can I call it? Yeah, I just made that up. Yubs. Who write their racist propaganda. Okay. You just bought the book Critical Race Theory on eBay. Yes, I also I bought on Kindle. I have a Prime subscription, so I did the whole Audible thing to try to try it out, and turns out I'm not a big fan of Audible. But one of the books that I was able to get was, I think it's the reader, the introduction. Oh, you know what? It's not even on. I tell a lie. It's not on Audible. It's on Kindle. But I figured out how to use my Kindle app on my desktop in order to have it read aloud as if it was like All right, so that's useful. I'll take your advice. I'll go with finding some video clips. I don't think we necessarily need on this show. You guys don't need to watch me look for clips. This one I think is going to be a little bit more difficult. So how do you visually, so when I want to pull out here, I know that things, when it comes to, what the hell? You guys hear that rumbling? I think someone's just parked in my street. I don't need this anymore, I don't think. I need to figure out a way to represent critical race theory visually in terms of its main. This one's going to be tough, I think. I think doing the summary for critical race theory is really gonna be rough. So one of the things that you can do with Doodly that is fairly nice is it's not that difficult to, like, they have a lot of pre-drawn characters. So if I wanted to, for instance, have people of various backgrounds, I think Abraham Lincoln, no, they do have, looks like, if I do black, oh, okay, all right, they're not, okay, they don't do, they're not that sensitive, like, they won't put those out, but if you say man, Baco here is clearly not stereotypically white. So you can use some diversity in who you have drawn in these sections. So one idea would be to represent them with people. Who else? Baco. Who's Bapto? Bradley. Businessman doing yoga? Okay. Clearly kind of white guys here. So one idea could be to have it duly draw in the people, like I did last time. Otherwise, there might be an image. And I can draw in my own images. I could, bring something over, import it in. So I'll have to have it. And then finally, and then I think we're going to probably end up going. But this was good time. Thank you guys for listening to me talk through my thoughts and finalize and get some feedback. Hopefully you'll be able to see the video by the end. Trying to do them one a week, but this week I had 2. In the last 7 days, I've prepped 2 different entire D&D sets. A lot of work. And their critical race theory. So maybe one thing I could also do as a strategy to help guide my content is to foreshadow an objection to the things that they're going to say. So when the racists talk about critical race theory, pull up. Probably to that. There. That's an easier way to look at it. Okay. Yeah, this might be content-wise very, very useful. So maybe, because one of the things, maybe this one needs a little bit more in depth in terms of analysis. Because I start using coded language here, right? When they talk about the belief that people of European descent make society racist for their own benefit, I think that, if I plan, if I want to pick up on this idea. One is, Americans of, they're just talking about white Americans. Why don't you just say white Americans? Because a lot of people are, what is Europe? What does Europe have to do with it? There are a lot of people of color in Europe. And so there is, pointing out the coded language. One of the things I could do is set up the video to lay a groundwork for taking on this particular framing of talking around the racism in order to both claim victimhood and reinforce this idea of whiteness as European and European as whiteness. They also have the view that they've got 2 spaces here between these, and it's not fully justified, so they didn't need those 2. The view that racism is baked into the system and inescapable. Again, that's another thing I could lay the groundwork for, depending on which quotes I pull up. Right, so Tim Wise in that thing has a really good rebuttal. But again, I want to find someone besides him. I want to find someone that he's quoting, to say these things. So I'll have to look around for that. I found his clip ages ago, and I found it really good for Twitter, which is why I keep it. The view that racism is present even if no one is racist. There's just, oh God, this is so garbage. This is so garbage. It's just, it's the problem of it takes 10 times the work to unpack crap. The view that all disparities in group outcomes are due to racist systems. So yeah, I'm gonna have to think a bit more tactically. Social justice wasn't so bad because social justice, you can inherently kind of think, okay, justice on a social level. It requires less of a, but here they are 5 steps ahead in their racist assumptions to the point where I can understand what they mean and how they twist it, but trying to convey that in a video. So what I might want to do, thinking tactically, is to pick 3 of these points or maybe 1 from each and find clips that are designed specifically to refute things I know are coming up in this section. So, the other thing too is what they say here in terms of the belief that people of European descent make society racist for their own benefit. It's almost accurate. When Tim Wise goes on, he says, racism was the point. I'll just let him finish his comment. But it's just so easy for them to manipulate. So I'm going to continue on. You can kind of see maybe where I'm struggling with in terms of the concepts and the refutations here of pointing out the lies that use the framework of a truth. Let me show you.
Critical race theory fundamentally says that the reason we still have such profound racial disparity in this country, white families with 12 times the net worth of black families on average, for instance, is that racism and racial inequality has been so embedded in the structure of the society from the beginning that formal equal opportunity is not enough to create real equity or equal protection of the law.
The problem is that it takes that long to say that, whereas, racists just will lie in a few words. And it is harder to get across a complicated critical analysis of unequal power structures, because that also requires an understanding of the historical facts. And because, especially white America, but most Americans, unless they were taught outside the classroom, have not been taught the basic facts of racism in American history, you can't assume people are going to understand that about redlining or about the racial discrimination in terms of access to and enjoyment of the GI benefit. And even if they do acknowledge one of the problems, if the thousands, they'll go, oh, that's just one example. Like, oh, that's just one instance where, but that doesn't really show systemic racism. So it's very difficult to concisely counter-argue the propaganda of Gilley et al. Because they rely on the ignorance of white America and their defensiveness, their almost like instinctual resistance to taking moral culpability for the system that benefits them. I mean, they just haven't, they can rely on people's stupidity to get them through. And the problem with counter-arguing them is you can't talk to people up here. It's, as much as I love some of the people who are out there doing work, they're talking at an academic level. They're talking up here. And for the people who understand them, because they live in that bubble, they probably are the least likely to need to be convinced. But how do you bring this down into a common language that draws on facts that you can assume your audience has, regardless of their educational background? Some fundamental core that you can say, all right, well, at least you know, for instance, about the civil rights movement. Like, I need to be able to build from that, as opposed to assuming that my audience understands redlining. And that is the difficulty of being on the left. People on the right revel in their stupidity. They revel in their anti-intellectualism. They revel in their contempt for people who have thoughtful, a well-researched takes that are grounded in empirics, if those things refute their truthiness in their gut. So finding this way through to be succinct, clear, and basic, while also presenting an effective counterpoint, is hard. All right, so I actually didn't get as far into making the video, although I feel like conceptually I have a clearer path now. I hadn't had the mental space for that. So I'm going to continue on maybe next week if I'm good. Now that I don't have to do, I'm not prepping 3 games a week. What is it? Saturday I ran a session, the murder mystery. Actually, I've got another one coming up next Saturday, but I've been doing a lot of prep for my D&D session. So once that moves along, I should be able to give a bit more time to. If you happen to, by the way, if you happen to come across a TED Talks or an interview, or a video clip of somebody who gives that kind of succinct summary of critical race theory that is designed for media, is designed for sound bites, is designed to be that laser focus, please tag me in on Twitter. Don't do it in the chat. Chat's gonna end here. Don't do it in the video. I won't look. But yeah, share it on Twitter and tag me in at KWINT. So Kristi Winters, but oh no, TIE. We start again at KWINTIE. Kwinty. Because yeah, it's from my uni days, my prefects at my university. Anyway, it's a very old account. Yeah, I'm gonna go because I still have to figure out how to kill my characters. No, just kidding. I have to make sure I provide a challenging encounter for my D&D people. If you want to see me be less focused on nerdy academic things and instead focused on nerdy D things, you can go over to my channel, D&D with Kristi, and you can check out me getting my baddies getting their butts kicked by my party last night. But you can also join me for my Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign with my other players over on that channel. I think Tiffany Cross did a good succinct definition. Okay, yeah, I have a look at that. Yeah, I like Tiffany Cross. She's badass. She's got some good takes. So I've seen her clipped on Twitter, so I will have a look out for that. Thank you, Corey. All right, well, that is an hour, and so then all that's left to be said is that I've been Kristi, you've been awesome. We will see each other next week. I might be taking off some vacation time in September, because I realized I don't remember the last time I've not done a Sunday show. I think it was when I was sick like a year and a half ago. So I think I might do some pre-prepared content and upload it in lieu of my Sunday show and take some time off. So until next week Sunday, y'all, I've been Kristi. You've been awesome. Lee, thank you again for the $2. I really do appreciate it. I got a tip. And yeah, we'll see each other again very soon. So all the best from me. Stay healthy, stay safe, be well wherever it is, whenever it is you are. And until next time, she says as she looks over to the end button, but then still making eye contact with the audience as she ends the stream. Be well, and goodbye.